I'm blind, yet I married the crown prince, Zhan. He has a sharp tongue and a bad temper. He was always in a bad mood when leading me by the hand. What would you do without me? Until his advisor gifted me a guide dog. From then on, Zhan was out of a job. That night, I heard the crown princess furious and exasperated yelling. Damn it all, of all the things you could have sent, you had to send a dog. She has a dog now, so what about me? What am I supposed to do? And you, what are you wagging your tail for? Being her dog is a blessing I prayed for years. What gives you the right to take my place? I was born blind. After seeking medical help for years, I could only vaguely make out shadows. My dad saved money for me since I was little. He'd drop copper coins into a clay jar one by one, saying, Achi, don't be afraid. Dad will save lots and lots of money for you. Later, he felt that was too slow and went for something big. He followed Uncle Lu from next door, taking up a sword to conquer the kingdom. 7 years later, the kingdom had a new name. Uncle Lu had become the new emperor. My dad was recognized for his role in the ascension and was made a marquis and a general. At the palace banquet, the new emperor held my dad's hand. The two men looked at each other, recalling the old days. They hugged and wept. After too much wine, the emperor slapped my dad on the shoulder. Brother, what else do you want? Your old brother will grant you anything. My dad sniffled, and in a moment of inspiration, he said, my daughter's marriage isn't settled yet. According to his recollection after sobering up, he had intended to ask for a county princess title for me. Then I could find a husband to marry into our family. Who knew the boss would be so generous and decide on the spot? Achi is a good girl. With a wave of his hand, he betrothed his son to me. The entire court's expression changed. Some advised against it, others just coughed. The emperor was silent for a moment, then had a realization, oh, the crown prince can't be married off to someone, can he? And so, I became the crown princess. The day after our grand wedding, we went to the palace to pay our respects. The emperor was in the imperial study reviewing memorials. He bestowed upon us a pile of silk and jewels, then waved his hand, saying the empress was thinking of us, and told us to go to the Phoenix Wing Palace. The palace path was long and utterly silent. I held onto my attendant's arm, my fingertips tightening. I was a little scared. My mother passed away early. After my dad went off to fight for the throne, he left me in the care of the Lu family. All these years, the one who took care of me the most was Auntie Lu, the current empress. Auntie Lu is a formidable woman. The Lu family's successful conquest owed a great deal to her strategic planning. She is shrewd, decisive, and always thinks 3 steps ahead. So I figured she must not approve of this marriage. The position of crown princess is crucial. How could a blind woman like me handle it? This marriage was entirely based on the emperor's drunken whim. For the crown prince and for the court, I was not a good match. How disappointed Auntie Lu must be. The more I thought about it, the heavier my heart became. The palace bricks under my feet seemed uneven. In a daze, I stumbled forward. Ah! The attendant cried out softly, failing to support me properly. A hand reached out from the side, catching my arm. Can't you even walk properly? Zhan's voice sounded. He pushed the attendant aside and took my hand himself. The palace path was long, and Zhan's palm was very warm. He led me, one step at a time. Upon entering the Phoenix Wing Palace, Zhan was called into the inner chamber by Auntie Lu. I clutched half a lotus seed pastry, sitting in the outer room and chewing it slowly. I could vaguely hear voices from inside, but not clearly. Only Zhan's occasionally raised voice saying, Mother. It was tinged with embarrassment and annoyance. The pastry was very sweet and stuck in my throat. I took a small sip of tea to wash it down. The palace maids were silent, and only the soft clink of the teacup lid could be heard. After a long time, footsteps drew near. Zhan came out, a small breeze trailing him as he walked past. He didn't speak, only tapped once on my armrest. Auntie Lu's lady-in-waiting invited me in with a smile. The inner chamber was filled with the quiet scent of incense, the cool fragrance Auntie Lu always used. She took my hand and had me sit beside her. Achi, her voice was gentle. Once you're married, there are some things you have to learn, you said. For example, how to handle your husband. I froze. This wasn't what I had imagined, she said. Men have a stubborn streak in them, you can't always indulge them. For your own good, you can humor them on a normal day. But when it's time to set the rules, you can't be soft-hearted. If he's stubborn, you be even more stubborn. If he acts unreasonably, you give him the cold shoulder. You can't give him too many treats, he won't cherish them if you do. You have to let him know that your kindness isn't to be taken for granted. Your smile is something he must cherish. Her fingertip traced a line on my palm, as if enlightening me. I came out of Fenji Palace, and Zhan was leaning against a pillar in the corridor. Seeing me come out, he lifted his eyelids. What did Mother say to you? It took so long. I tilted my head at him and smiled slightly. Mother taught me some principles. What kind of principles? Principles between a husband and wife. Zhan coughed abruptly, as if he'd choked on his own saliva. After a moment, he managed a sentence. You should learn something proper. On the 3rd day, we paid the bridal visit home. The carriage curtain moved, and Zhan jumped down first. He turned around, extended his hand, and supported my arm to help me out of the carriage. As soon as my feet touched the ground, I leaned over. Zhan cleared his throat, not even bothering with pleasantries. He went straight to naming dishes. Duo, I want to eat red braised pork knuckle and 8 treasure duck. Crab roe lion's head meatballs, clear stewed fish. He rattled off 7 or 8 dishes in one breath. They're all specialties of my family's chef. I chuckled mischievously. I knew you'd want to eat. Lunch is ready. Don't worry. Lu Zhan's eyes lit up. That's great. Duo, for dinner I want fish fillets in wine sauce and stir-fried shrimp. Braised mutton in brown sauce, and also a ham and fresh bamboo shoot soup. The air fell silent for a moment. I took a deep breath and patted my chest. Lu Zhan was satisfied. Thanks, Duo. Lu Zhan is quite a character. He picked up food with his chopsticks, kept the conversation going, and still managed to put food in my bowl. My bowl was never empty. A piece of pork knuckle was gone, and a duck leg took its place. After the lion's head meatball was finished, deboned fish meat landed in my bowl. I buried my head in my food and ate intently. Finally, Lu Zhan watched me finish my soup. He got up and pulled me up too. Father, are you coming? Let's go for a walk together? I still have things to do, you two go ahead. So Lu Zhan had to take me to the garden by himself to walk off our meal. He held my hand, walked very slowly, and from time to time reminded me to watch my step. There are steps. To the left, there's a pond over there. After walking for a bit, he stopped under a tree. It was quiet all around, with only the sound of the wind blowing through the leaves. He suddenly sighed, very emotionally, and tapped his fingers on my arm. Zusi, oh Zusi, what would you do without me? There he goes again. Lu Zhan has loved saying this since we were kids. When I was 7 years old, the first time I went out, I ran into a tree and got a bump on my forehead. Lu Zhan called me stupid while carefully applying medicine. He said, what would you do without me? When I was 10 years old, I got lost in the back garden. He found me and dragged me back by the wrist. He said, what would you do without me? After this happened many times, I also found it strange. I secretly asked Auntie Lu. Ozan always says I can't manage without him. It's weird. Auntie Lu was arranging flowers at the time and just asked faintly. Does he make you uncomfortable? I thought about it and shook my head. Not really. Every time he says that, he does take even better care of me. As if to prove his own words. Auntie Lu smiled, her tone light and easy. Let him be. It's just one of his episodes. It can't be cured, nor does it need to be. I understood then. This is Lu Zhan's old ailment. It flares up from time to time. But Auntie Chong said I should coax him more, so I spoke, softening my voice. That's right. What would I ever do without you? His footsteps paused. Fingers on my arm tightened, then relaxed. As long as you know. He huffed, his feigned maturity almost slipping. After we returned, I decided to stick with coaxing him more. Lu Zhan said he would take me around the Eastern Palace to help me learn the way. I immediately nodded, my voice exceptionally soft. Of course, I'll listen to whatever you say. He seemed taken aback by my compliance and paused for a moment. Only then did he reach out for my hand. Hold on tight. If you fall, no one's going to help you. I squeezed his fingers, not calling him out on it. The Eastern Palace was huge. Lu Zhan held my hand, walking extremely slowly. As he walked, he pointed things out. To the right is the main hall. It's where I usually meet people and handle my affairs. Ahead and to the left is the study. Watch your step. To the right is the garden. It has a pond. There's a railing by the edge, don't get too close. All I could see were blurry patches of color and light. I followed his voice, mentally mapping out the directions in my head. His descriptions were detailed. The paths, the obstacles, where I could touch and where I couldn't. He explained it all clearly. I pulled my hand forward to feel something. Here, a pillar. Remember, you have to go around this. My fingertips touched the cool wood. I'll remember. He then led me forward a few more steps. This corridor is long. It takes a quarter of an hour to walk through. The ground is flat, so just walk straight. A breeze blew under the corridor, carrying a bit of early summer heat. It was very quiet, with only the sound of our footsteps and his voice. After walking for a while, we came to a place, and he stopped. This is the small garden behind the bedchamber. You can come here for some fresh air in the mornings. The ground is level, with no steps. 15 steps to the right, there's a stone bench under a tree. Don't bump into it. I nodded. He seemed to turn his head to look at me for a moment, then suddenly asked. How much do you remember? I blinked and answered honestly. He let out a chuckle. There wasn't much contempt in his voice. He squeezed my wrist and took my hand properly again. If you can't remember, it doesn't matter. As long as I'm here, it's fine. That sounded familiar. I could see that his, what would you do without me, old ailment was about to flare up. I immediately picked up the cue, my tone sincere, you're right. Thank goodness I have you. His steps faltered slightly, and he didn't reply. He just held my hand, his palm growing a little warmer. Lu Zhan then led me around 2 more small paths, pointing out the direction of the kitchens. Finally, he stopped in front of a moon gate. Don't go in there by yourself. It's the bathhouse. Oh, on the way back, he didn't ramble on giving directions anymore. He just held my hand, walking in silence. He didn't let go until we were back in front of the bedchamber. Want to try on your own? See if you still remember where the door is. I looked at the blurry vermilion block in front of me, estimated the distance, and slowly extended my foot. My steps were careful. 11 steps, turn right, and reach forward. My fingertips touched the slightly cool doorframe. I found it. I breathed a sigh of relief and turned to smile at him. See? I can remember a little. He stood in the light and shadows, not saying a word. After a few seconds, he just huffed. I guess you're not that dumb after all. Zhan brought a small dog back today. He said it's a guide dog, a gift for me from one of his aides. What does it look like? I raised my head and asked. It's yellow, with a shiny coat. Its ears are a little floppy, and its eyes are shiny and black. He described it in detail, then asked. Do you like it? I nodded, my fingertips sinking into its soft fur. Should we give it a name? Zhan tapped the back of my hand. Fugue, I blurted out. So down to earth, so auspicious. Zhan paused for a moment, then clapped his hands and burst out laughing. Great, it's catchy and has a good meaning. His laughter was hearty and genuine. Zusi, you have a talent for naming things. He genuinely thought the name was excellent. After all, the ones he came up with weren't as good as mine. Fugue is very smart. Within a few days, he had learned his way around the Eastern Palace. He'd stop at thresholds and slow down on stairs. During meals, Zhan would habitually reach his hand out to me. Let's go, time to eat. Fugue would let out a yip, grab my skirt, and led me to the dining hall. Zhan's hand came up empty. After the meal, he wanted to take me to the garden for a walk. He had just started to say, Zusi, let's. When Fugue was already wagging his tail, nudging my leg with his head, signaling it was time to go. Zhan's words got stuck in his throat. He wanted to hold my hand like he always did. But Fugue was faster, his small body blocking the space between us. His shiny black eyes looked up at him, his tail wagging like a little pinwheel. It was as if to say, leave a small task like leading the way to me. And just like that, Zhan was completely out of a job. At night, when it was time for bed, I tucked Fugue into the blankets with me. His body was warm and fluffy, so comfortable to hug. As I stroked Fugue's soft fur, I remembered there was another person lying next to me. I hesitated for a moment, then turned my head to whisper, if you don't mind. I can take Fugue to sleep in the side chamber. The moment the words left my mouth, a figure next to me shot up. Who said you could go to the side chamber? Zhan's voice was filled with disbelief, and the anger of being offended. He looked down, glaring at Fugue in my arms. He gritted his teeth, it's just one dog on the bed. Is it suddenly too small to sleep in? He lay back down with a thud and pulled his own blanket over, his back to me. After a moment, he turned back around, stared at Fugue, and added fiercely. Let him sleep on the outside. What does it look like with him squeezed in the middle? I silently moved Fugue closer to the edge of the bed. I was sleeping drowsily when I felt the person next to me. It seemed like Zhan got up in the night. I turned over and went back to sleep. I don't know how much time had passed, but when I reached for the warm spot beside me, it was empty. Where's Fugue? I woke up with a start. Panicked, I sat up and called out softly, Fugue? There was no answer, only the sound of the wind outside the window. I fumbled my way out of bed, planning to call a palace maid. My feet had just touched the ground, and I hadn't even steadied myself. When I heard a sound coming from the side chamber. My eyes aren't good, so my hearing is sharper. It was Zhan's voice. There was also a deeper, steadier male voice. It was Mr. Zhou, who visited often. Mr. Zhou asked, Your Highness, that little guide dog, is he working out for you? There was a moment of silence. Then Zhan's voice suddenly rose into a low roar. Damn it, of all the things you could have sent, you had to send a dog. I jumped, steadying myself against a bedpost. It wasn't quiet next door. She has a dog now, so what about me? What am I supposed to do? Mr. Zhou seemed stunned by the yelling and was silent for a long time. But Zhan only got angrier as he spoke. I heard the sound of agitated footsteps, and then I heard him growl through gritted teeth. And you, what are you wagging your tail for? Being her dog is a blessing I've sought for years. What right do you have to snatch it? In the side hall, Zhan's yelling continued, with a reckless abandon. Zhou Chong, what are you playing at? I told you to find something to amuse her, not to ruin my life. Mr. Zhou's voice was hesitant. Your Highness, I just thought the dog was clever and gentle. It could help your Highness relieve your worries. Relieve her worries? This is a total takeover. Zhan's voice grew louder. She only has eyes for that dog now. He grew more agitated as he spoke, the words tumbling out like spilled beans. I have to see if the dog is happy before I can even hold her hand. What right does it have? Huh? What right? I'm the main consort. I'm the one who was properly married to her. The door creaked open. Zhan, what do you mean? Being my dog is a blessing you've sought for years? I stood there, leaning on the doorframe. The light before my eyes was blurry, but I could make out the silhouettes of two figures. And a small, fluffy shadow, its tail still wagging. A dead silence. I shall take my leave. Mr. Zhou slunk away along the wall, gently closing the door behind him. Zhan's Adam's apple bobbed. His eyes darted around, not daring to land on my face. For a long moment, he couldn't form a complete sentence. I took a step forward. Just then, Zhan's eyes swept over to me. Zusi, are you trying to get yourself killed? You're not even wearing shoes. He roared, rushing over in just a few strides. Before I could react, the world spun. He hoisted me up by the waist, my head facing down. Zhan, I pounded on his back. He paid me no mind, holding my flailing legs with one hand as he trudged towards the bedchamber. Put me down, shut up. He walked quickly and steadily, his shoulder digging uncomfortably into my stomach. Fugue trotted along behind us, his tail wagging happily. The palace servants all bowed their heads to avoid looking, their shoulders trembling. I could hear the heavy, ragged sound of his breathing from his chest. He carried me all the way to the bedchamber before tossing me onto the bed. Fugue leapt up lightly and curled up by my feet. Zhan stood before the bed, his chest heaving. He glared at me, then at Fugue. Finally, he said gruffly, "Go to sleep." He blew out the lamp, lifted the covers, and lay down with his back to me, wrapped up tightly. Sleeping was out of the question. I sat up and groped my way to the inner side of the bed. To face him, I reached out to pull away the blanket covering his head. He was holding it tightly. I'd pull a little off, and he'd yank it right back, wrapping himself even tighter. After a few tries, I lost my patience. So I just fumbled around until I found his face. The moment my fingertips touched his skin, Zhan went completely still. His breathing stopped. Taking advantage of his stunned state, I ripped the blanket off. He stared at me with wide eyes. Even his blurry silhouette in the darkness showed his astonishment. My hand was still on his face. I traced the contours of it. Then, I raised my hand and gave him a light smack. A soft smack sound. It didn't hurt, but it was crisp. Zhan was completely stunned. "You hit me?" Fugue was startled and let out a small whimper, lifting his head. "You deserved it." I pulled my hand back and stated matter-of-factly. "Explain yourself. What's this about a blessing?" What was he trying to say? He went silent in an instant, as if he'd been choked off. In the darkness, I could feel his burning gaze fixed on my face. After a long moment, his Adam's apple bobbed heavily. I thought he would shout, loud enough to make the rafters tremble. But instead, his voice was low and soft, with the tremor of someone throwing all caution to the wind. "Oh." I slowly scooted back to my own spot and lay down. The figure beside me moved abruptly. "Or what?" I turned my back to him, pulling Fugue closer into my arms. "I'm sleeping." Behind me, Zhan was so angry he sat straight up, pointing at me and stammering, "You," for a long time without finishing his sentence. Finally, he threw himself back down with extreme force. The bedboards let out a muffled thud. My eyes were closed, but I couldn't help the corners of my mouth from secretly curving up. Zhan's feelings. He isn't very good at hiding them. Before, you could say it was just the affection between childhood sweethearts. He was just used to taking care of me. But what about getting married? With his temper, if he wasn't willing, he would have raised hell long ago. That day at the palace banquet, when the imperial edict was announced, the entire court was in an uproar. The old officials beat their chests and stamped their feet. They said the position of crown princess was no child's play. After I sobered up, I was so scared I almost knelt and begged for the order to be retracted. And Zhan? He just sat there quietly. Until the emperor asked, "What is the crown prince's opinion?" Only then did he slowly stand up. Without looking at anyone, he faced the throne and gave a mumbled, "MMH." Then he quickly knelt down and kowtowed firmly. Later, when he came to present the betrothal gifts, the tips of his ears were bright red. His voice was low as he promised my father repeatedly, "Sir, I will be good to Achi. Good to her for a lifetime." I didn't dare to respond. I suppose I'd never seen the crown prince looking so shy. And then later, on our wedding night, when he lifted my bridal veil, his hands weren't even steady. He stumbled over his words when he spoke to me. As he left the room, his left foot tripped his right, and he took a fall. Yet he insisted he was fine. All these little fragmented moments, I remember them all. He thought he could hide it. But when you like someone, you can't hide it. Your breathing, your tone, your movements, they're all giveaways. But it wasn't like in the storybooks, where he confesses and we immediately understand each other's feelings. I understood Zhan's feelings. Those awkward, scorching feelings he had hidden for so many years. But what about myself? I placed a hand on my heart. It was beating steadily. Aside from tonight's rather amusing episode, there weren't many turbulent emotions. If I had to say, it's probably that I'm used to it. Used to having him around. From age 7 to 17, a decade had passed. He was like a loud, boisterous shadow. One I couldn't shake off, nor could I leave. This habit runs too deep, too heavy. It has almost drowned out any other possible feelings. Like, perhaps. But this, like, that I feel, compared to what he feels for me. It doesn't seem to be the same. I turned over, facing his side. His breathing still hadn't steadied, and his body was rigid. He was clearly still annoyed with himself. I quietly reached out a finger, and through the air, I faintly traced his blurry silhouette. This person, I probably can't leave him. It's just that, this can't leave. Is it because of 10 years of habit, or is it because of that flutter called, like? I don't know. 2 days passed peacefully. For me, at least. After Zhan's confession that night, he was very uncomfortable. He would either linger in the study until late at night, or he'd sneak out early in the morning. When he spoke, his tone was stiff, as if I owed him money. As for me, everything was as usual. I ate when it was time to eat, and slept when it was time to sleep. Petting Fugue's fur was very pleasant. That day, his older cousin invited us to the hunting grounds on the outskirts of the capital. I wanted to stay in the Eastern Palace. Zhan wouldn't have it, and practically dragged me and shoved me into the carriage. What would I do there? I asked. You're about to turn into a mushroom at home. Oh, what's wrong with mushrooms? Mushrooms are great too. The hunting ground was in the suburbs of Beijing. Zhan, surrounded by disciples of the imperial clan, galloped his horse for a lap. I entered the tent. On the table was roasted venison, glistening and fragrant. The meat was tender, and the seasoning was perfect. Delicious. I don't know how many pieces I'd had when the tent flap was suddenly thrown open. It brought in a gust of wind and the scent of grass. Zhan was back. He strode over to me in a few steps, his shadow falling over me. Still eating? His voice didn't sound right. It's delicious. I clutched the bamboo skewer and looked up, blinking. He reached out and took the plate away. Roasted meat is heavy and hard to digest. He stood beside me for a moment, his breathing gradually calming. His gaze fell on my face, a bit heavy. After a moment, he asked tentatively in a low voice. Want to go for a ride? I'll take you. You'll take me? He hummed in agreement, his tone serious. Since we're already out, I'll take you. The wind rushed against my face. The early summer wind carried the scent of fresh grass. Everything before my eyes blurred into flowing bands of color. Green was the meadow, brown was the earth. Occasionally, a brightly colored riding outfit flashed by. I couldn't see clearly, only the dizziness brought on by the speed. The ground jolted and receded. I could feel the stretching of the horse's muscles, Zhan's heartbeat. And the strength in his arms. If you're scared, just close your eyes. His voice mingled with the wind. I closed my eyes. My other senses grew sharper. The wind picked up, lifting strands of my hair. The air had the taste of freedom. And the crisp, clean scent of soap from him. I could even taste a hint of sweetness in the wind, probably the fragrance of wildflowers. It was a rare kind of thrill. The sounds of voices and horse hooves faded into the distance. The smell of dust dissipated as the floral scent grew stronger. Zhan reined in the horse, slowing it down. He led me around a bend and stopped. We're here. His voice was tight. There's a patch of wild roses up ahead. They're blooming, quite well. He dismounted and reached out to lift me down. My feet touched solid ground, the hem of my skirt brushing against the grass. The rich fragrance of the flowers enveloped me. I took a deep breath. After walking a few steps, I asked him, did you go back just now specifically to bring me here to smell the roses? His Adam's apple bobbed. He gave a muffled, admitting it. I froze. This wasn't like him. Before I could react, he spoke again, his voice low but clear. Zusi, what I said that night. I was serious. I wasn't drunk, and I wasn't having an episode. I just like you. I have for a long time. He paused, then his words came faster, so don't even think about denying it. And don't pretend you don't understand. I was completely floored. Such a direct confession, it left me speechless. I thought he'd be awkward about it for at least 10 days or half a month. I never expected that he would lay his heart bare like this, right beside the wild roses. My cheeks were burning. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something. Like, I know, or maybe, shut up. But I couldn't get a single word out. Thankfully, I can't see. I didn't have to meet his scorching gaze. After a moment of silence, he touched my arm. Say something. What could I say? I've never been through something like this. My face was still on fire, and my mind was a total mess. What do you expect me to say? You don't like me? I picked at my fingers for a long while. At a loss for words. He held his breath for a moment, then let out a heavy sigh. Fine, just keep tormenting me. He gritted his teeth and pulled me back. After we got back, Zhan insisted I watch some plays with him. They were all about scholars and beauties, tangled in love and resentment. A scholar down on his luck meets a rich young lady, a devoted woman falls for a heartless man, all the most popular tragic romances of the day. They gave me a headache. It was all so ridiculous. I squeezed Fugi's paw and muttered under my breath, is this scholar out of his mind? Instead of preparing for his exams, he'd rather jump into a river. Beside me, with a loud crack, Zhan crushed a walnut. With a dark expression, he waved his hand. Change the play. The next one was even more absurd. A rich young lady broke off with her family for a poor gardener. And in the end, she froze to death on the street. I was baffled. What was she thinking? Her mother left her enough shops and land to live for 10 lifetimes. Why run off with a gardener who couldn't even support himself? He stared at me, his expression complicated, as if trying to find any sign that I was just pretending to be clueless. Finally, he slumped back in his chair, defeated. He rubbed his temples and waved for the acting troupe to leave. Forget it, this is pointless. In the end, it was Aunt Lou who saved me. She had a well-connected friend who knew a miracle doctor. Aunt Lou asked her to make the introduction, offering a great sum of money for the miracle doctor to treat me. The doctor was an old woman of few words. Her fingers were dry and warm. She took my pulse and checked under my eyelids for a long time. After a long, thoughtful pause, she said slowly, you were born with a weak constitution, and your meridians are blocked. The treatment will be difficult, and you'll have to endure some pain. I'll start with acupuncture to clear your meridians and improve your circulation. You'll feel a bit of a dull, aching pain. I'm in your hands, doctor. I nodded. During the acupuncture, the aching sensation was distinct. But before I could even react, I heard sniffing beside me. Zhan was standing there, his brow tightly furrowed. It was as if the needles were piercing him. With the next needle, he gasped again and shed a couple of tears. When Dr. Sun turned to get another needle, I tilted my head and whispered, "I'm really okay." He didn't make a sound, but his tears fell with a splat. Aunt Lu, who was sitting to the side sipping tea, shot him a look. She set her cup down with a crisp clink. "Look at the state of you." Her tone was flat. "Go to the kitchen and check on the medicine." Zhan stiffened his neck to argue, but one glare from her shut him down. He shuffled away, looking back every few steps. After the acupuncture, Dr. Sun packed up, and the servants left. Only Aunt Lu and I remained in the inner chamber. The scent of medicinal herbs filled the air. I fiddled with my fingertips as my confusion resurfaced. "Mother, I don't think I like Zhan that much. At least, not in the same way he likes me." It was as if Aunt Lu had expected me to ask this. She poked at the ash in the incense burner. Her voice was even. "What does it matter? Do you hate him?" "No, I don't." I immediately shook my head. "Does he not take good care of you?" "He does, he's great." "Well then, that settles it." Aunt Lu looked up, her gaze clear. "What's most important is that you're comfortable. Thinking so much will only tire you out." That did make sense. Having Zhan around, I feel safe, and I'm used to it. But isn't this unfair to him? I licked my slightly dry lips. I'm enjoying all his kindness, but I can't give him the same in return. That's not right. Aunt Lu looked at me for a moment, then suddenly smiled. "Silly girl, the two of you have just been together for too long." She took my hand and patted it gently. I decided to move to Fenji Palace for a while, to spend some time apart and think things over in peace. With distance, the answer would naturally come. And so, I moved into Fenji Palace for a short stay. When I told Zhan, he immediately blew up. "Can't you just invite Dr. Sun to the Eastern Palace?" Auntie Lu shot him a look, and he quieted down instantly. On the first day, he came first thing in the morning. He lingered beside me. "Are you getting used to it here? The incense in Fenji Palace doesn't smell as good as the one in the Eastern Palace." He stayed until evening, when Auntie Lu finally shooed him away. The second day, he showed up right at mealtime. He scrounged breakfast and lunch, and even wanted to stay for dinner. But in the end, his personal eunuch came to escort him away, saying a mountain of memorials was waiting for the crown prince's approval. The third day, he sat down right next to me. "Zusi, when are you coming home?" Thought for a moment, then shook my head. "A little longer." He didn't say a word. After lingering for a long while, he left in a huff. On the fourth day, he got smarter. "Fugue misses you." He held the dog out to me, his tone stiff. "It's not eating." I didn't reach for it. Auntie Lu calmly took the dog and held it, stroking its fur. She looked up at Zhan. "Well then, just leave him here with me for a couple of days to fatten him up." He watched Fugue whining contentedly in Auntie Lu's arms, a look of despair in his eyes. The fifth day, all was calm and quiet. His mother had assigned him a pile of tasks, so he couldn't come. Only a young eunuch came to deliver a plate of osmanthus cakes. I sat under the veranda, chewing the last half of an osmanthus cake. My mind was empty, except for a single thought. What is Zhan doing? Is he reviewing those memorials, frowning, looking impatient? Or is he pulling some advisor aside to listen to him complain over and over again? Or could he be thinking of me, too? When that thought popped into my head, I froze for a second. My fingers unconsciously traced patterns on my knee. Suddenly, I couldn't sit still anymore. I stood up and made my way toward the inner hall. Auntie Lu heard my footsteps and looked up. "Mother, I want to go back to the Eastern Palace." I stopped, my voice a little hoarse. She didn't speak right away. There was just the soft sound of a page turning. I licked my lips and added, "I want to go now." Auntie Lu put down her book and looked over. "Figured it out?" My face felt a little warm. I lowered my head. "I haven't figured out any grand truth. I just want to see him." Her tone was brisk. "I'll have someone escort you." I turned and walked out, my steps a bit rushed. Just as I reached the door, I heard her add slowly from behind me, "Walk slowly, don't fall." He's not going anywhere. My face grew even warmer. At dinner, Zhan added several extra dishes, all of them my favorites. He kept putting food in my bowl until it was a small mountain. He barely ate anything himself, just kept his eyes on me. That night, after washing up, we lay down side by side. Fugue squeezed in between us, rubbing his furry head against my chin. Sound of breathing. The candlelight was hazy, and for a moment, no one spoke. There was only the sound of our breathing and Fugue smacking his lips. "Zusi, the bed at Fenji Palace. It's not as comfortable as the one in the Eastern Palace, is it?" "It's fine. And the chefs there. Their pastries aren't as good as the ones in the Eastern Palace, right?" "They're about the same." He fell silent again. After a moment, he turned to face me. I could feel his gaze on my face. It was a little scorching. He just stared at me intently, not saying a word. His breathing gradually grew heavier. And then, it dawned on me. My heart skipped a beat. I hesitated for a second, then reached out my hand. I gently covered Fugue's little head, then, guided by my senses, leaned forward slightly. Toward his blurry silhouette, I quickly gave him a peck. My lips met something warm and a little dry. I seemed to be a bit off target, brushing the corner of his mouth. I pulled back immediately, my own face already burning up. The person beside me froze. His breathing stopped completely. It was so quiet inside the tent you could hear the faint sputter of the lamp. After a long moment, he finally seemed to breathe again. He took a sharp, sudden breath, his voice trembling as he stammered. Why did you kiss me? Because I felt like it. My face grew even hotter. Weren't you the one who wanted this? I thought, trying to stay calm as I mumbled. After speaking, I let go and lay back down, pulling the blanket over half my face. After that night, it felt like the unspoken wall between us had quietly crumbled. He would never say it out loud. But he'd find times when we wouldn't be disturbed to sit stiffly beside me, and then he wouldn't move an inch. His breathing would grow deliberately quiet, holding a hint of subtle anticipation. I knew this was my cue to make a move. At first, I couldn't get the position right and just leaned in based on feeling. Sometimes I'd kiss his chin, other times his cheek, and he would be very dissatisfied. You missed. Oh, I'd reply, fumbling to adjust my position again. The moment my fingertips brushed the corner of his lips, he would eagerly meet me, capturing my lips perfectly. Later, he must have gotten a taste for it, because he went from waiting to launching sneak attacks. Since I couldn't see, I was defenseless. I'd be drinking tea, and he would suddenly lean in and plant a quick peck on my lips, leaving behind the cool fragrance of tea. When I was by the window listening to the rain, he would wrap his arms around me from behind, lower his head, and I'd feel a warm touch on the side of my neck. It tickled, making me flinch. As it happened more often, I started to pick up on his habits. Whenever he drew near, there was always a faint sound, and that unique, clean scent that clung to him. But I usually pretended not to notice. One afternoon, during a nap, I was half asleep. I felt him quietly draw close, his movements very light. Our lips met and lingered for a long while. It was so tender. Just as I was about to respond, he suddenly got shy. He started to pull away, but I instinctively chased after him just a little. His breath hitched, and he immediately pressed back against me, kissing me a little more forcefully than before. Just as I was lost in the moment, his body went rigid and he stopped. What's wrong? I was bewildered. His voice was still laced with a breathless gasp, and a hint of unbelievable embarrassment. Fugi is watching. I listened closely, and sure enough, from beside us I heard Fugi's soft little snuffles. And the swish of his tail against the rug. My face immediately burst into flames. Zhan shot bolt upright, facing the fluffy bundle on the floor. His voice was thick with embarrassment and annoyance. Close your eyes. It's rude to stare, don't you know? Fugi whimpered, and wagged his tail even more happily. 2 months of medicinal soups and acupuncture really paid off. When autumn came, the jumbled shadows in my vision started to resolve into distinct shapes and outlines. It was harvest time, so Zhan had to lead a team to the countryside for an inspection, and he'd be gone for half a month. He was worried and nagged me with a pile of instructions. I held Fugi's paw and waved it at him. Don't worry, I'll go back to the Marquise's residence for a few days. Besides, I'll have Fugi with me. Only then did he leave reluctantly. Perhaps because I was so relaxed, my eyes recovered even more quickly. One morning, I woke up in my bedroom and instinctively opened my eyes. The light stung, making my eyelids twitch. I squeezed them shut, then slowly opened them again. The bed canopy was carved, the wood grain clear, the gauze curtains were a watery green, letting in the morning light. It was so gentle, I shot up in bed. My heart was pounding, almost bursting from my chest. I can see? I turned my head, looking toward the dressing table by the window. The bronze mirror reflected a figure, somewhat blurry. That was me. I raised my hand, looking at my own fingers. One by one, clear and distinct. Fugi? I tried calling his name. The little yellow dog lying on the footstool immediately lifted its head. Its shiny black eyes looked over, its tail thumping against the floor. It really was Fugi, yellow, with a shiny coat and slightly floppy ears. Exactly as Zhan had described. Every single thing here matched the outlines I had touched with my fingertips and imagined in my mind, yet they were all so different. So this is what it's like. Colors are so vibrant, and light and shadow are so distinct. When my father came in with breakfast, I was still sitting on the bed in a daze. When he saw me staring straight at him, he nearly dropped the bowl of porridge in his hands. See? Why you can see? His voice trembled. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. I couldn't utter a single word. My father froze for a moment. With a clatter, he set the bowl on the table, rushed over, and threw his arms around me. He wailed loudly, a battle-hardened general, crying like a child. When he had cried his fill, he wiped his face, laughing through his tears. Wonderful. My daughter can see. With that, he rushed out in a flurry. I must immediately send a memorial to the palace. Later, I heard from the servants that my father and the emperor had wept together in the imperial study. Not long after, Auntie Lu sent someone to bring me to the palace. She didn't say much, just took my hand and carefully examined my eyes. Then she gently patted the back of my hand. Come, let's go take a look in the garden. I followed close behind her. The garden of Fenji Palace was something I was seeing clearly for the very first time. The rockeries, the flowing water, and all the flowers and plants I once had to identify by scent and touch. Auntie Lu handed me a flower stalk. It's not quite the same as when you could only smell it, is it? I took it. Tiny, golden yellow flowers were clustered together, their fragrance sweet and rich. It was completely different from the scent-only memory I had. Sight made that sweetness concrete and full-bodied. These are osmanthus blossoms. Auntie Lu's voice was serene. She picked up another branch. It was adorned with a few light purple flowers. This is a hibiscus. I watched her trim the flower branches, her movements elegant and graceful. My gaze fell on the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. So this is what Auntie Lou looked like. Just as I had imagined, and yet, not quite. I could see. The world had suddenly opened up before my very eyes. The day Zhan returned, he was travel-worn and dusty. He strode through the doors of the hall. The hem of his robe was still covered in dust. I was sitting by the window and looked up when I heard him. The bright sunlight fell upon him. Inch by inch, I studied him intently. A prominent brow, a straight nose. His jawline was set a little tight. His lips, they looked very kissable. So, this was Zhan. So this is what he looked like. He walked over to me in a few steps, his shadow casting over me. His gaze was searing as he stared into my eyes. You can really see? I nodded, not saying a word, just studying him carefully. I looked at his eyebrows, his eyes, and his lips, which were slightly dry and chapped. I want to carve every clear, vivid inch of this into my mind. He seemed a little uncomfortable being stared at by me, and his gaze flickered for a moment. Then it immediately snapped back. What are you looking at? He habitually tried to sound fierce, but his tone wouldn't hold, the end of his words wavering. I kept looking at him, my eyes slowly crinkling into a smile. Looking at you. I don't know how those two words got to him, but the rims of Zhan's eyes instantly turned red. He abruptly turned his face away, raising his hand to roughly rub his eyes with the back of it. His shoulders were trembling slightly. When he turned back, his eyes were wet. The tip of his nose was also red. He called my name in a hoarse voice, thick with nasality. Then, he opened his arms with that characteristic reckless abandon. He pulled me tightly into his embrace, so forcefully it felt like he was trying to crush me. His chin pressed hard into the crook of my shoulder, it hurt a little. He was hugging me so tight I could barely breathe, but I could feel his body trembling, and the rapidly spreading, scalding wetness on the side of my neck. He was crying for me. That soft spot in my heart was struck hard, and it ached with a bittersweet pain. My own eyes started to burn. I raised my hands and gently wrapped them around his back, patting him every now and then. I see you. I answered him in a low voice. He cried even harder. Snot and tears were probably smeared all over my shoulder. I was just wondering if I should remind him to mind his composure. He suddenly sniffled and lifted his head. A shiny snot bubble, with his breath, swelled up and trembled at the tip of his nose. I froze. He froze too. Our eyes met. With a pop, the bubble burst. A small, cool, wet spot rubbed onto my new dress. I looked down at the faint wet stain on my collar. Then I looked up at his red-rimmed eyes and his completely stunned expression. I couldn't hold it in. Zhan's face instantly went from pale to flushed. Zhu, you're not allowed to laugh. He seethed through gritted teeth, but the tips of his ears were red enough to bleed. I pressed my lips together, but my shoulders couldn't stop shaking. He glared at me fiercely, reaching out as if to wipe it for me, but then thought better of it. In the end, all he could do was stiffen his neck and pretend nothing happened. What are you looking at? Haven't you ever seen someone cry before? I have. I just haven't seen a crown prince cry until he blows a bubble. Of course, I didn't say that out loud. I just smiled with my eyes, carefully taking in his embarrassed appearance and memorizing it in my heart. Ever since my eyes got better, Zhan has been acting completely off. Specifically, he's started wearing more clothes. You have to understand, he used to sleep completely naked. At night, I would just reach out my hand and touch a stretch of firm, warm skin. Like a toasty branding iron. But now, hey, he wears his inner robes buttoned up tight. The collar is tied impeccably, the sashes are even tied in dead knots. Before, when I was blind and couldn't see, he was completely unreserved. Now that I can see, all the perks are gone. At night, when we lie down, I deliberately reach out to touch him. The moment my fingertips touch the fabric, he flinches back violently, as if he's been pricked by a needle. What are you doing? His voice was tense, startlingly clear in the darkness. What's wrong with a little touch? I said, feeling completely justified. He was silent for a moment, pulling the blanket tighter to go to sleep. I wasn't having it. I scrambled over to him on all fours. Without another word, I started pulling at the sash of his inner robe. Zhan froze completely. He abruptly grabbed my mischievous hands, his voice changing pitch. Zhu, why you? When did you become such a little rogue? I've had an epiphany recently, I said matter-of-factly. Besides, we've been husband and wife for so long. Shouldn't we consummate our marriage? I pushed his resisting hands away, looking dead serious. If word gets out, what will people think? That our relationship is bad, or that you can't perform? I leaned close to his ear and lowered my voice. He froze. His breathing clearly grew heavier. Don't you try to provoke me, he said, his voice hoarse, but the strength in his hands gradually loosened. I took the opportunity to pull open his collar, my fingertips touching his warm skin. He abruptly clutched his collar again in a final struggle. What about Fugue? He's sleeping in the side hall. I've arranged everything. He's probably fast asleep by now. I was well prepared and answered crisply. Zhan stared at me, a conflicted look in his eyes. After a long moment, he seemed to finally give up resisting. He let go and fell back onto the pillow in resignation. Do as you please. He seemed to be reluctantly accepting his fate. He couldn't hide his eagerness. After that, things got a little chaotic. As my consciousness drifted, he held my fingers tightly. The candle light flickered and intertwined on the bed curtains. Like spreading ink wash, their outlines blurring. I don't know how much time passed before the storm gradually subsided. His sweat-dampened hair brushed against my cheek. It was a little itchy. I didn't have much strength left either. My fingertips unconsciously toyed with a stray lock of his black hair. After a while, he propped himself up slightly. His gaze was still glued to my face. I lifted my hand, which felt a bit weak, and gently caressed his face. My fingertips traced along his brow bone. Then to his eyes, the corners of which were slightly upturned. They were glistening now, looking less aggressive. Then his nose, straight as a mountain ridge. Finally, they stopped at the corners of his lips, which were a bit redder than usual. I looked closely, as if trying to completely merge this sensation with the clear image before me. He let me do as I pleased. His Adam's apple bobbed slightly. I like it, I said suddenly. Like what? His gaze shifted, locking onto mine. His voice was still tinged with a fading hoarseness. My eyes curved into a smile, and I pressed my fingertip gently against the corner of his lips. I like you. He was stunned. Then, it was as if thousands of fireworks exploded in his eyes with a bang, dazzlingly bright. The moonlight outside the window was perfect, and it was warm inside the bed curtains. When Zhan was 5 years old, he noticed the little girl from Uncle Ju's house next door. She didn't go out much. When she did, she would just sit quietly under the old scholar tree in her yard, unlike the other children who ran and jumped around. Zhan was the king of the kids. He often led a group of them to climb trees and swim in the river. For the first time in his life, he took the initiative to approach her, placing his hands on his hips and asking like a grown-up. Why are you always sitting here? The little girl looked up, her eyes were misty and unfocused. She said slowly, listening to the wind. Zhan was taken aback. What's so interesting about listening to the wind? He only ever felt it stinging his face. Later, he heard his mother sigh, saying that the Zhu family's daughter had bad eyes, and that it would be difficult to treat. An inexplicable tightness filled his heart. After that, his father and Uncle Zhu would go off to handle important matters, and would send Zhu Si to their house to be looked after. Zhan thought this girl was too dazed and needed someone to watch over her. So he puffed out his little chest, walked up to her and said, "Hey, call me big brother, and I'll look out for you from now on." Zhu Si turned her head at the sound and, without hesitation, called out, "Brother Zhan." That, Brother Zhan, was so soft and sweet, it made Zhan's heart warm. He felt a great sense of responsibility. "Come on, big brother will take you to get some pastries." He took Zhu Si's hand and slowed his pace. For the next 3 days, wherever Zhu Si went, she would call out to him. "Brother Zhan, I want some water. Brother Zhan, I'm hungry." Brother Zhan. Zhan followed his mother around, copying everything she did. He'd test the water temperature before handing it to her and remind her about the threshold when walking. Madame Lu watched her son's suddenly busy little figure. She found it amusing. "Oh, my, a change of heart? You know how to take care of your little sister now?" The tips of Zhan's ears turned red, but he tried to act tough. "She calls me big brother, so of course I have to look after her." Inwardly, he was quite pleased with himself. Being a big brother wasn't bad at all. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. The adults were chatting and brought up the children's birthdays. And just like that, the truth came out. Zhu Si was actually several months older than Zhan. The chopsticks Zhan was using to shovel rice into his mouth froze. He turned his head to look at Zhu Si, who was nibbling on her vegetables beside him. She seemed to be stunned for a moment too. Her misty eyes blinked. After the meal, Zhan reached out to take her hand as usual. But Zhu Si pulled her hand back, her voice soft and a little hesitant. "Zhan?" The brother was gone. Zhan's heart sank. He felt a sense of emptiness. He said stubbornly, "So what if you're a few months older? I look taller than you." Zhu Si didn't argue, she just looked at him quietly. Her gaze made Zhan a little flustered. He hesitated for a long time before muttering sullenly, "Call me whatever you want." After saying that, he still reached out habitually. He took her arm to help her around the stone block in the courtyard. His actions didn't stop. Serving tea, fetching water, reminding her about the threshold, everything continued as before. It was just that the pride he felt as a big brother shattered with a crack. He was a little gloomy, but watching her quietly drink the water he handed her, her profile so gentle, that bit of gloominess disappeared. "Oh well," he thought. "Even if I can't be her big brother, I still have to take care of her." He thought with resignation, I was the one who promised her in the first place. And so he continued this task of serving her tea and water. He kept at it for many, many years. In fact, he wanted to do it for a lifetime. When they were 12 or 13, the Lu family was no longer what it once was. The residence was vast, with a growing number of servants. The adults were away at war for most of the year. Zhu Si still lived with the Lu family. Zhan was also kept at home to focus on his formal studies. His teacher was an old, white-bearded scholar who was very strict. That day, he was teaching a poem from the Book of Odes. Zhan heard the line, "Wan Wan cry the ospreys," on an islet in the river, and felt something stir in his heart. The teacher said it was about a gentleman's yearning for a fair lady. An image of Zhu Si sitting quietly by the window flashed through Zhan's mind. For once, he didn't lose focus. He mulled over those few lines of poetry again and again. After class, clutching the fresh, newly learned verses, he ran to the back courtyard as if his feet had wings. It was a perfect spring day, the sunlight so warm it made one's bones feel lazy. He passed through the moon gate, and immediately saw Zhu Si sitting on a stone bench under an old peach tree. The peach blossoms were in full bloom, like a pink cloud above her head. When the wind blew, petals fell into her hair and onto her shoulders. She didn't notice, only tilting her face up slightly, feeling the warm breeze and the fragrance of the flowers. Her profile was soft, her neck slender and fair. Zhan stopped in his tracks. The small ripple in his heart, stirred by the poem, suddenly became a raging wave. He could hear his own heart pounding like a drum. He took a deep breath, walked over, and deliberately made his footsteps heavy. "Hey, Zhu Si." She tilted her head slightly at the sound, her misty eyes looking toward him. Zhan stopped in front of her and cleared his throat. Suppressing his unease, he said, "The teacher taught a poem today." "What poem?" His gaze drifted elsewhere, the tips of his ears turning hot. "Want me to recite it for you?" She nodded, the corners of her lips curving into a slight arc. "Okay." Zhan stood up a bit straighter, took a deep breath, and began to recite, "Wan, cry the ospreys, on the islet in the river." He started off fluently enough, but when he got to, "a fair maiden, a good man's match," his gaze involuntarily fell back on her face. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the flowering branches, casting dappled spots of light on her face. She listened intently, her long lashes occasionally trembling. That petal was still clinging to the side of her hair, rising and falling slightly with her breath. Zhan's throat tightened. What comes next? Sought her and could not get her, he thought and yearned. His voice unconsciously dropped, a bit hoarse. His mind went blank, filled only with the image of her at that moment, and the heat that was rampaging in his chest with nowhere to go. He stumbled through the last few lines. The courtyard fell silent, with only the soft sound of the wind rustling the leaves. Zhu Si was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "It's beautiful." She reached out her hand, feeling for something in the air. A peach blossom petal fell into her palm. She closed her fingers, feeling that extremely light touch. Zhan looked at her closed hand, then at the touch of pink by her temple. As if possessed, he reached out and, very lightly and quickly, brushed the petal away. His fingertips brushed against her cool strands of hair, like an electric shock. He snatched his hand back. He suddenly resented that old scholar. Of all the things to teach, why this particular poem? It had dredged up all those indescribable things in his heart. Zhu Si just continued to lift her face, feeling the wind and the sun. Zhan stood beside her, not saying another word. The ospreys from the poem were fluttering their wings in his heart, each beat stronger than the last.